funny how a small, ordinary, seemingly insignificant action can have a huge impact. One of the times for me was in 2005 when I was at my construction job, driving by some houses that were condemned to be demolished to make way for a new development. Halfway up the block, I stopped my truck in amazement and thought, "Look at all the apples on that tree!" It was a large apple tree next to a house absolutely loaded with apples, with a good pile on the ground as well. It was the beginning of July, and I was amazed to see it fruiting at this time of year. I got out and filled my lunchbox with some to take back to the office, an action that changed my life forever, as well as the lives of countless other people. I could have kept on driving, or I could have just eaten the apples and left it at that, but instead, curiosity started to sit in, and man, did I have no idea where it would ultimately lead or what was about to hit me. Back at the office, everyone I shared them with really enjoyed the apples, and I noticed most of them were seedless. I started wondering how great it would be to save that tree, but it was far too large to be transplanted, and it was scheduled for demolition in a couple of days. There had to be some way to get into the tree of it somewhere. I had heard about grafting, and a friend told me how to do summer bud grafting over the phone. So, after getting permission from the developer, I bought some potted trees from Home Depot and went and took a bunch of cuttings from the tree. I also called a wholesale nurseryman named Tom Spellman, who graciously agreed to meet me at the site and look at the tree. He identified the variety as Dorsett Golden and encouraged me to continue experimenting. To this day, I hold him responsible for much of the following insanity that has consumed a big portion of my life. Looking back at the photos of the cuttings I took, they were mostly fruit spurs and are not the best for what I was doing. But not only did the grafts take, one of them proceeded to blossom and fruit the same season and continued on to form a 3-foot branch. The next season, that branch literally exploded in blossoms and fruited as many apples as it could. That was it. I was hooked. I wanted to do more grafting, try more varieties, and learn more about this remarkable fruit. Now, it was about this time that small orchards started selling apple cyanwood online. Also found an apple rootstock wholesale supplier who sold in minimum bundles of 50 rootstocks. 200 sounded like a nice round number, and so I ordered those and about 75 varieties of cyanwood that I chose at random because I like the name. The spring of 2006, I grafted all these, planting a lot of them in the yard and the rest in pots. I also gave away a handful of them. To my delight and amazement, the bench grafts grew like crazy and even grew side branches and looked incredibly healthy and vigorous. The trees took a while to go dormant during our typical mild winter, not losing leaves until around January. I started to really worry at this point. What if none of them ever fruited? I had invested a lot of time and money. I had started to read up more on apples and heard over and over again about them needing a lot of cold to flower and fruit. The super low chill varieties like Anna and Dorsett Golden blossomed in January, but the rest of the varieties just sat there. February came and went with still nothing. March, nothing. Finally, around the end of April, we got a few blossoms, but by May they were exploding with blossoms. So okay, they blossomed, but would they set fruit, and would the fruit be any good? Summer wore on, and it was incredibly hot that season. Some of the apples rotted on the tree, turning inside black and mushy while the outside was still green. But others were good, which lifted our spirits. As the fall season arrived and things cooled off, we started getting some extremely good apples. And as winter approached, some absolutely fantastic apples. Now, none of this was supposed to happen. The winter before, we didn't get much more than 200 hours below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And this was interspersed with weeks of warm days with highs reaching up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the varieties we tried were listed at needing 800 to 1,000 hours of temperatures below 45 degrees. When I asked some highly experienced, highly educated apple people how this could be, they suggested that maybe I lived in a microclimate that had a cooler environment than the surrounding area. This was silly, of course, as I had torn out a big clump of bananas to plant the apple trees, and a neighbor has a big Valencia orange tree right next to my orchard. The only logical conclusion is that I live in a warm climate, and apples will fruit just fine in a warm climate. Well, it was time to share this with the world. I already had a business and website set up for selling my teardrop trailer plants, and it was a simple thing to add apple trees to this, and Cuffle Creek Apple Nursery was born. At the same time, I started getting requests to speak at different gardening groups, such as California Rare Fruit Growers. Orders for apple trees came in from all over the southwestern United States, and I started to wonder just how far the warm climate apple nursery would go. The answer would soon come the next season, and once again I had no idea what God was about to bring. I'll tell you all about that in the next video.